the individual and ensure that they are presented before court. What we are seeing is abrogation of the rule of law. Abrogation of the rule of law that has gone to the core of abrogations of human rights of individuals. Today we have seen the most violated human rights of citizens by this country and by this government.
Was this any different when the PF was in office? Well,
I will tell you that what is good for the goose must be good for the gander, as a matter of fact. However, we vote into power different political parties because we want to advance, we want to improve. If there were those wrongs in the PF, which wrongs have been acknowledged, and I saw President Lungu on several forums apologizing to the Zambian people over the wrongs that were happening in PF. And I don't think those wrongs should be tolerated today. We should be able to evolve. A good leadership is one that is going to say, this was happening wrongly in the previous regime. It was wrong. Now we are moving to a better place. If this was happening in PF, it was wrong and it can never be right today.
So by putting it in a way that you're saying that it's broken down now, shouldn't you be saying it's always been broken down?
No.
And it was broken down by the PF, and this issue hasn't been fixed because it's already been broken.
We need to look at facts as they come. Today we have seen members of parliament being brought before court for having made a statement in the National Assembly, protected by parliamentary privilege. Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia protects this member of parliament. But today, we'll see that a member of parliament is arrested, abducted, and taken to the police. 3-4 days down the line, not charged. We've seen examples. Munir Zulu was arrested, not charged after 4 or 5 days. A lot of other MPs were arrested and not charged. Now, if we have to really live up to a system that abrogates human rights without any remorse, therein lies a problem. Because Zambia is not a dictatorship. We gave ourselves a system of governance, which is a democracy. Now, Zambia is a constitutional democracy. In our constitution, we have provisions of the law that guarantees our rights and protects our freedoms. We should not have this abrogation of constitutional provisions or human rights abrogations without justifiable means. Now, you see, these human rights that we have are inalienable. You cannot separate them from me. You cannot take them away from me. So what we are seeing is the freedom of movement is being curtailed. Freedom of association is being curtailed. Right now, as we are talking, I will tell you, as of yesterday, we saw yet another opposition leader joining forces with UPND, all in a bid to annihilate opposition political parties. Today, as we are talking, you've mentioned it, that the Patriotic Front appears to have 3 factions. All this is dented with unfair treatment of the opposition by the ruling and President Hakainde.
Shouldn't you be the last to talk as PF as far as this matter is concerned, because you also merged forces with opposition political parties.
And you see,
and the same political party that was signing an MOU yesterday with the UPND alliance is the same party that went to bed with the PF in 2015.
Peter, I'll tell you that we need to evolve. We need to evolve. We cannot have a situation where we keep on referring to PF. I don't have a problem with referring to history,
because things keep happening the same way.
That is where the problem is. It means we've got a leadership that does not learn from experience. You need not live into the experience of others in order for you to learn from that experience. What is happening is we've got an incorrigible leadership currently. This leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema has failed to live up to the expectations of Zambians. Zambians decided in 2021 to get rid of PF because of the way PF was behaving, because of the cadre mentality. The cadreism was highly much of a threat to national security and peace of Zambians. But now what we are seeing is a repeat, taken now what we are seeing is a pro-max of what the PF were doing, if I should put it that way. So it should not be the case. So if this leadership wants to learn from the experiences or the mistakes of the PF, they needed to know that the wrongs that were done in PF should never be repeated. And we cannot, I mean, people need to learn to live, to move on. President Hakainde needs to move on. The opposition, I mean, the ruling today has to learn to move on. We are no longer, 3 years down the line, every press conference we see where the UPND wants to talk about development, they will always refer to PF. I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is that there is nothing they can point at to show that they've developed this country. Unlike the toilets that they were commissioning in Kwacha. There's nothing they can point at. You cannot compare the development of PF.
Addressing issues like executive powers, electoral processes, and judicial independence.
Well, you see, I've always had a very unpopular stance on constitutional reforms. Today we have a 2016 Constitution Amendment Act number 2, which I feel and believe is an act which is okay for the Zambian people. It does not need any further amendments. And because I say it does not need any further amendment, the reason is because this is a constitution that has not been fully tested. We have a constitution that has got provisions that have not been fully tested. What do we do? If anyone, and this is what I have kept on repeating, if anyone feels therein lies a lacuna in this constitution, they are free to take that provision that they feel has got a lacuna to the Constitutional Court for interpretation. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. For now, I believe the Zambian people have got a good constitution. Which good constitution we gave ourselves in 2016? Which constitution has not been fully tested? If anyone in this country feels and believe there is need for an amendment in this constitution, it should be an amendment based on critical issues. For example, an electoral process. Which electoral process? I've always had a view that the best electoral process for Zambia should be proportional representation. Which electoral process was shut down in the 2020? Is it the Bill 10? You know, that Bill 10 had proposed for that electoral process to be amended to have proportional representation. It was shut down. The Zambian people said, we don't need Bill 10. So because of that, I think we need to live by what we have. There's nothing wrong with our constitution. If anyone feels, well, they need to amend it, let them take certain provisions to the Constitutional Court for interpretation. Then and only then can we start talking about the failure of a provision. For now, in terms of amendments of the Constitution, I don't think it's the right way to move. Secondly, looking at electoral reforms. Now, you see, we have seen a scenario in this regime, in this government, where the UPND has decided to try and institutionalize cadreism in many government departments. Now, what we are seeing, for example, at the Electoral Commission of Zambia, is where non-PF, is it UPND cadres, are now at the helm of controlling operations of the Electoral Commission of Zambia, to the extent of going beyond the mandate of the Electoral Commission of Zambia, wanting to take the place, wanting to take. It's not rocket science that McDonald Chipenzi is a UPND cadre. It's not rocket science that Mwangala Zalomis is a UPND cadre. It's not rocket science, and I don't have any apologies to make over that. So what we have seen now is where the UPND have gone on now to even abrogate constitutional provisions by introducing committees that are not constitutional to spearhead mandates of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Very unheard of, very unconstitutional. And those are things that personally I've been indicating to say we should not allow ourselves to stoop so low to the extent of allowing our colleagues to abrogate constitutional provisions without being told off. Imagine today there's an advisory committee created to look at electoral reforms by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Are we saying that the Electoral Commission of Zambia cannot come up with those reforms? Those are things that we need to be looking at. What mandate do these guys have? Is that constitutional? Because the mandate of the Electoral Commission of Zambia is defined in the Constitution and further defined in the Electoral Process Act, is in the Electoral Acts, as the case is. So, why should we have situations where we have a clear show that this Electoral Commission of Zambia is operating as as an arm or as a department of the UPN government? Now, this has not only been seen.
Is that true?
Well, any day, any time, I can justify it. I can justify it because we have seen what transpired in Kwacha and Kabushi, where our colleagues decided to abrogate, going against a judgment of the court. And that is one thing we've been talking about. The rule of law has to be respected. Wherein there is a judgment, colleagues, let's respect the courts. At least we need to respect the courts. The judiciary should be the bedrock to protect the integrity of our democracy. That is what we seek for. That is all we request of our colleagues. Imagine we had a scenario where a registrar of societies was removed from office. Names of office bearers of the Patriotic Front were changed despite having known that these are matters before court and these matters are sub judice. Those acts were not only potentially contemptuous, but were contemptuous as a matter of fact. By today, if we had a reasonable government, if we had a government that looked up to the rule of law, to respect the rule of law, by today, this permanent secretary in the office of Home Affairs would have been in court today, because whatever they did was a criminal act. By today, this registrar of societies, who is there today, the one who effected the changes of office bearers for the PF, would have been in court, because whatever they did was criminal and it was contempt. It was contemptuous. So this is what we are talking about. Colleagues, we need to start respecting the fact that Zambia is not a banana republic. We are a government that has to be ruled by laws.
Okay. Mr. Mukandila, again, you're speaking to systems here. So what measures would you propose to strengthen institutions and promote accountability in these institutions? Because you're calling out certain institutions. How would you do that?
The biggest measure that we need to do to begin with is to change the leadership. We've got a leadership that feels that they are the alpha and the omega. We've got a leadership that feels that they, just because the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia gives them the power to appoint, they can decide to intimidate these systems of government. Now, here's the thing. I'll give an example. The Constitution has provided that the power to appoint comes with it the power to disappoint. Yeah? So, what that simply means is, as long as the president has got the power to appoint, he is the one with the power to disappoint or fire. So we have a system where we are supposed to have an independent judiciary as an arm of government, which independence is compromised by the appointment, by the appointing authority. How? The president will appoint the judges. When it comes to the removal of the judges, by the recommendation of the JCC, the president still has the power to remove them. Now, where the compromise comes in is where the president is still the person to appoint the JCC. So therein lies the problem. But now, all that we ask for is integrity. The people that are being appointed to these positions should at least show that they've got integrity. If you are being requested to do the wrong thing, there is nothing wrong with saying it out into the face or the eyes of your boss and say, Mr. President, what you are telling me is unconstitutional. There's nothing wrong with that. It's been done before, and I've seen leaders who've put their foot on the ground and said, this I cannot do, I will not do it. And they've been seen as enemies. I'll give an example of what transpired at the Anti-Corruption Commission. Musa Mwenye just decided to say, I'm failing to operate because clearly the instruction is coming from somewhere. And I think this is not right. after a revelation by Dr. Kab. So that shows you to say we still have men and women of integrity. So in terms of the compromise, in terms of the independence, what we first need is a leadership that will respect that Zambia is a democracy, that has got a constitution, whose basis for leadership should be respect for these institutions of democracy, so you, institutions of governance.
What you're saying for you,
it's the leadership problem.
And not
systems problem. It is clearly a leadership problem. And I'll give the reason why I feel it's clearly a leadership problem. You know, today again, today as well.
Reason, because the UPND in opposition told us we had a leadership problem with the problems that we're facing under the PF. And then you sit here as a member of the PF telling us now that we have a leadership problem and not a systems problem based off our failing systems. Why do you have this different opinion?
It's not a different opinion per se, but I will tell you that today's failure is because of a leadership problem. It is clear in plain sight. I will tell you why I feel, for example, there's a serious failure in this leadership. Imagine today, the recent, when you look at it, and this is something in the public domain, the recent song that was released, for example, by the UPND, there's a song that was released by the Oga family. Did you know that colleagues in that song are ZNS officers? Now, why do I say there's a leadership problem? You cannot have civil servants behaving in a manner as cadres. This government has institutionalized cadreism. A civil servant can never subscribe to a political party. A civil servant's principle
when you're in opposition, you sound totally different. Like this can never happen.
But these are factual things.
Again, when we take you back to the time when you were in power, would you say there was nothing of this sort happening?
I will tell you something, and this is something that I'm sure made this gentleman very unpopular. I don't know if in his circles they've started talking about it. Just recently, 4 or 5 days ago, the permanent secretary in the office of Ministry of Sports, Youth and Sports, commonly known as Pilato, Chamafum, made a statement to say, I cannot make a political comment. I am a civil servant. Do you know what that shows? This is a person who has understood that when you are a civil servant, you are not a politician. Kwamana, have you heard Pilato singing songs of you